Hi everybody, my name is Christina and I will be discussing the domestication of the wild horse with you today, also known as Equus ferus. And I decided to do my presentation on this particular species because I grew up around horses. I rode them, I fed them, took care of them. My aunt had a couple that she was so gracious of letting me help out with them. When I was in high school, I actually took some physiology classes, or ag classes as they called them, and I learned many things about the different breeds, what their purposes were, why they had the different traits that they did, but I don't remember anything talking about the domestication, so I thought this would be a good start for me. In order for a species to become domesticated, the domesticators have to see a benefit from the potential relationship. Horses was one of the species that the early humans saw a benefit from taking the time to tame. From 6000 BP, Ukrainian steppe humans changed their view of the horse as just a food source to something that could potentially carry loads for them for long distances to help with their, obviously to help them out. That's always a good thing. So they started the domestication process. Eventually, they climbed on to the backs themselves and saw even more benefit out of this species. The power held within a horse can pull plows that we can help plow our fields to grow our food, which obviously comes a little later, but it can also pull wagons or sleds to get us great distances. They were also used in the creation of the railroad lines. Their muscle can be eaten as a source of protein, and with time, selective breeding can establish certain desirable traits that we can use as extra benefit. The domestication of the horse revolutionized how we fought in wars, how we traded, how we traveled, as a source of food, get that extra protein, very lean meat, and how we also communicated with others as well. The domestication process, which transformed wild horses into many different breeds that we have today, is difficult to reconstruct from archaeological data in modern genetics alone. But with new technologies, we have been able to analyze DNA from modern species and ancient species that we've uncovered as well. As you can see by the graph in the middle, the horse meat is still being produced for human consumption, mostly in Europe. The horses for courses photo shows cuts of meat and places where they are a delicacy, like for instance Japan. In my high school ag class, I learned here in the US that horse meat was used in dog food at one point, and their hoofs were used for making glue, which I thought that was kind of interesting. The photos in the bottom right, minus the plow and the guy, I took from a sample site this past summer. The owner had horses, they were beautiful quarter horses that he would use to pull the wagons and sleighs, and then he also had a Clydesdale that he would use as a single horse to pull something, but he had mentioned that the other one had passed away, so he was looking for another one. But it was kind of interesting, and he also had a steam engine tractor in his back barn, which was gorgeous, good condition too. Selective breeding has established certain desirable traits for plowing horses. These are usually very muscular and tall, like the Clydesdales, as I said earlier, and have larger hoofs than their cousins to give them more foot grabbing area, spread out on the ground, and then their cousins, which obviously are smaller hoofs, smaller legs, which are made for speed. Horses were used to pull chariots and for hauling soldiers in war, as depicted in the bottom left for centuries by different cultures, like the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Chinese, and so on. Horse domestication was also used for communication, either by speed, as in with the Pony Express, which was in the early Americas, or by cave drawings and art depictions for future generations. Today, we still use horsepower, or we still see horsepower being utilized in rodeos, ranches, and farms. Outram et al. Found evidence demonstrating domestication in the Neolithic, I think that's how you say that, bow tie culture of the Kazakhstan, dating about 3500 BCE. Analysis of the metacarpals show that these horses resemble Bronze Age domesticated horses rather than the Paleolithic wild horses from the same region. Pathological characteristics found in found that the horses were actually brindled, meaning that they were harnessed, which could possibly mean that they were ridden. So when you harness a horse and you put a brindle on him, that means that you have the capability to control his head, which is an indicator that it's a good possibility that they were actually riding those horses. Also, fatty acid analysis of organic compounds revealed the use of the mare's milk and horse carcasses in bow tie culture ceramics, which is a possible indicator of development of domestic economy with secondary products for trade. So that's kind of interesting as well. And that was way back at 3500 BCE. So starting at the top left at this particular slide, this is the map of where the bow tie culture site was. Figure 2 on the right shows evidence of the wear on the tooth. If you can zoom into that, it's really kind of cool to look at that, which is the indicator that they used that the brindle was actually on the horse. The pottery in the bottom left is the ceramics that they use for their fatty acid analysis. Schubert et al. Sequenced two ancient horse genomes from Taimyr, Russia, both predating the earliest archaeological evidence of domestication. They compared the genomes of domesticated horses and wild Prowalski horses, pictured at the top right there. They kind of look like donkeys or something. It's kind of interesting. But they compared the genomes of those and found genetic structure with Eurasia in the late Pleistocene, with the ancient population contributing significantly to the genetic variation of today's domestic breeds, like that thoroughbred on the bottom left there. They also identified a conservative set of about 125 potential domesticated targets using 4 complementary scans for genes that have undergone positive selection. One group of genes is involved in locomotion and may represent the physiological adaptations to human utilization. So, for instance, that quarter horse is definitely built for speed. As I described earlier with how the selective traits worked, with the plowing horses and stuff too. And a second group consists of genes for cognitive functions like social behavior, learning capabilities, which may have been key for taming these wild beasts here. So they also found that domestication is associated with inbreeding and an excess of mutations that they were breeding for. So, for instance, selective breeding. This genetic load is in line with the, quote, cost of domestication hypothesis, also has been reported for rice species, tomatoes, and dogs, and it is generally attributed to the relaxation of purifying selection results from the strong demographic bottlenecks accompanying domestication. So once you pick up certain genetic genome that you like, a certain desirable trait, then you try to breed for that certain trait, and that can actually create a genetic bottleneck, which in a way is, you know, bad, but anyway. Um, so, yeah, so demographic bottleneck accompanying domestication. Uh, for instance, notice the tall, slender, muscular build of the thoroughbred compared to the wild horse at the top. Quarter horse obviously was bred for speed, which is a desirable trait for racing and competing, for instance, rodeos and, you know, horse racing and stuff like that. And this is what U.S. people in the U.S. actually look for, because they're muscular, but they are built for speed. So if you're a rancher, if you're a farmer, if you're into rodeo or, you know, 4-H or anything like that, horse racing as well, even for recreational riding, if you do any hunting. I know a couple people that hunt with horses, and they need the power, but the skinny legs to, you know, the speed to get up there. We do occasionally see the plow type horse, like Clydesdales, in this area, but I normally see them pulling wagons and sleighs and like parades. I did have the capability this last summer to witness a field being plowed by a small Luddite community outside of Salmon, which is pretty incredible. And they still use, obviously, the plow horses and stuff, so it's kind of cool. I learned a lot about this stuff here, but I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen with me here, and I hope you learned something as I did.